Fern fans are eating good this week. What an incredible episode. A nice combination of the comedy bits with Fern getting stuck in mimics and, yes, getting an explanation of mimics through Fern's butt. Additionally, getting some amazing action scenes. We actually got some extra action scenes compared to the manga itself, like the whole fight with the clone Laufen. Like that whole sequence of them actually fighting wasn't even the manga. So we get the little extra action there and incredible animation. And yes, getting this insight into this dungeon itself and the inclusion of the mimics. Denken's screwed. I'm kind of wondering if Denken's not going to pass, even though it is 3-on-1. This is Frieren. They're already kind of insinuating this idea that this is literally a Frieren. And even he says it himself. If this wasn't a part of an exam, I would have broken my bottle and got out. Insinuating the idea that if there wasn't something that I'm going to gain from this, which is this whole test, there would be no point in being here. If it was for the dungeon, for some kind of loot, I'd be out of here. But yeah, great seeing Laufen in action. I've been looking forward to seeing Laufen and her kind of combat style, which I kind of assumed at this point was going to be she's physical, but she uses magic to kind of enhance her, using the teleportations, but additionally the fact that she's just physically strong. And yes, having kind of the Monkey King kind of thing with the staff was really, really great. But yeah, really fantastic episode. Let's just jump right into it. Opening up the episode with Sense obviously explaining the exam itself, that they're all going to be going down in this dungeon. Then yes, once again, that she's a pacifist. Now, again, when they kind of brought this up in the previous episodes, I was kind of curious as to what Sense's mind frame is in saying that. Because, yeah, she's sending them into a dungeon where there's incredibly powerful stuff. I mean, even the cute little girl was going to die. You would kind of assume that there's kind of something here in her mind that makes her think that this is passive, like something that there's not going to be bloodshed. So either it's going to be an aspect of that maybe Sense doesn't know about how dangerous the dungeon actually is, or there's some kind of skewed perspective that she has of bloodshed and fighting. Now, yes, I think what they're sort of implying here is that strictly she's a pacifist in the idea that she does not want them to fight each other, which, yes, they don't have to fight each other in this dungeon. And then, in actuality, they can actually work together. She doesn't even tell them you can't work together. Denken's trying to get them to work together. They kind of imply the idea that it's because the previous exam, they were fighting each other. It was a free-for-all, basically, and there was no restriction to them fighting each other. So how are they going to trust each other? But still, it was a kind of a question mark that I had around Sense, and I don't know, maybe we'll get an explanation of that in the coming episodes, hopefully, and to kind of give her a better explanation as to how she thinks this is better. Now, granted, to her credit, like she said before, I don't like the idea that you're doing this first exam and people are dying. You're losing potential mages. And she creates a option for them, which is this other first-class mage with this golem that can kind of take them out of there. Which, yes, it seemed like an incredibly powerful golem. I got vibes of Illya and Berserker when she busted that glass and kind of got dragged out the door. But it's dang, that thing just literally busted through a wall that Denken wasn't able to bust. Now, it could be that that wall is strictly, essentially magic resistant and not physically resistant, which that's something that Richter could have handled. But again, they didn't really have an option here. It was either that or she was probably going to die before the time that Richter was going to be able to bust through it. So, and they didn't have any sort of idea that would actually work. So, very interesting stuff. But yes, the whole opening here where we have Denken's trying to get them to work together, nobody's buying it. One guy immediately kind of spits at him and goes right inside the door. They're all waiting around. I was kind of wondering what was taking Kane and Lawine so long. It's girls, are you going to do this test? Are you scared or what? It didn't give an indication of what they were doing. Maybe the idea that they were waiting around to see what others would do before they went in. But yeah, it kind of leaves remaining Denken and four others. Denken's party. So they go in there and immediately run into some gargoyles. They fight the gargoyles. Unfortunately, I was very disappointed in this episode in the idea that the cute little girl that I was hoping would be she'd be a hidden OP character. She's all dainty and scared and stuff, but then she does something really incredible. No, she just stood there the entire time that gets knocked into the thing. Which technically lends credit to the exam itself and the idea that she probably, seemingly, pretty much got a free ride through the first exam, whereas the second exam, she's going to be put in more danger and thus finally kind of culled out. It's sad. I was hoping that she'd turn out to be some amazing OP character, but in the end, she just gets knocked into the the chamber. I was like, girl, come on, show some OP ability. Nope, breaks the bottle. She's the one to show how the golems work, and again, kind of reminded me a lot of Illya and Berserker. I just got this immediate thought pop in my head. The moment that he pops up and he stops the walls, I'm like, Bazaka! And then gets drugged out just like Illya. But yeah, they eventually run into Laufen as a mimic, which, again, incredible action scenes and getting to see Laufen in action. Now, this is great, particularly getting the insight into all the characters and how they use magic. I've always loved how each one of these mages uses magic in their own way. And Laufen, like I said, seems like she uses hers to enhance her physical abilities. So she's teleporting around, she's using the stick, which I'm assuming is also enhanced by magic. And additionally, it seems like she can also... I don't know if she was batting away spells or if she was creating shields like everybody else, like usual typical magic shields that they've kind of designed. But it did kind of imply this idea of almost like she was batting them away with her staff, which was really cool. But yeah, eventually gets knocked out. And then, yes, like I said, they run into the next mimic, which is Fern. Good luck, Denken. I don't know. I kind of want Denken to overcome Fern as a clone, but at the same time, everything that we've kind of based around the idea of these clones and Fern herself, I don't see them winning. Unless there could be a defect in these clones. There could be an aspect of the clones that prevents them from essentially being an actual replica, or having some sort of weakness that the original doesn't have. That's the possibility that maybe Denken can use his mind to go, okay, no matter how good of a clone it is, there's this one aspect of them that doesn't work. And maybe he can utilize that. Or just don't fight her. Just try to get around her. Run. Just run. Just run to the end. I don't know if this thing will chase them or what, but good luck, Denken. I don't want Laufen to lose. I kind of like Denken now, especially like after the whole like fisticuff thing, but I just don't see it. They have to have a really good explanation as to how they can overcome Frieren. That's all I'll say. So we'll see though. On Wirbel's side, really quickly, yes, they go in there and they immediately run into 3 replicas, which bad luck for Wirbel. I do like that he immediately, you have Ere, she gets kind of locked down. I thought at that moment, and this is probably a trick that the writer was making. I thought the moment that Ere was like, hey, Wirbel, I'm bound. I was like, is Ubel going after them? Like, are we doing this? Like, despite the fact this is not requiring them to fight each other, is Ubel still wanting to get revenge against Wirbel or something like that? Like, she wants to fight him again? I don't know. It was like a very quick thought there. But then, like I said, the moment they show the replicas, I'm like, oh, it's Wirbel clone locking her down. But yeah, I do like the fact that he has laid out what each one of them will do, which is curious because they essentially have like once Ere to take down the other guy will take down Wirbel, and Wirbel's going to take down Ere, which makes me believe that 2 things. The first thing is I think that's a logical strategy. Because typically with these clone type stories, and this is probably what the writer was thinking as well, when you have clone characters in a lot of games and fights and whatever, they often will think exactly how you do. And so you often just you clash swords. So you go swiping overhead and they swipe overhead and you just hit each other. So you kind of think the same and thus nothing really happens. But additionally, it could be an aspect of Wirbel really kind of seeing that each one of them, he knows that they each one have something that can counter the other person. And additionally, what I was thinking about this is back when they first introduced Ere, there was one theory that I had at the time was that it was going to bring up this idea that Wirbel became the leader because he did all these dirty tricks and she was after it as well. Which obviously that theory was thrown away because it got into Ere and how, yes, at one point she was saved by Wirbel and her team coming in and saving her, and that she's been following him ever since. And yes, they knew each other when they were children. So it kind of threw that away, that theory, but it still implies the idea that possibly Wirbel believes that he has something that he can counteract Ere, and that he can't trust anybody else to fight Ere. That's kind of, it would be a really cool thought process there. Like, he knows that Ere is the strongest, because yeah, it's like when you're dedicating which one's going to fight which one, you would think that Wirbel would be like, well, I fight Wirbel because Wirbel is the strongest. I am the strongest. But no, he goes after Ere. So I'm kind of curious if this is going to be a reveal that Ere is actually much stronger. Well, I say that, and then it comes to mind, yes, technically Fern did say to Ere, but you're the strongest. So this implies still that Wirbel knows that as well. So that's actually pretty cool little kind of thrown it in there thing out of nowhere that kind of caught my eye. But yes, the joy of the episode was obviously around Fern and yes, Sense joining them. We all know why Sense joined them. Now, it is interesting because initially when they all are going in there, Fern's like, nobody's going to work together. It almost implied that Fern was watching what Denken was doing, and Denken was trying to get people together, but nobody was approaching him. And so eventually, Fern's like, okay, that's not going to happen. Like, it seemed like she was okay with the idea that if Denken could get people together, she was going to join him. But then it kind of turned to this whole thing of like, Mendokusai. Like, this is too troublesome. Nobody's going to work together. Whatever. Let's just go. And again, it seemed like Sense immediately followed Fern. Now, Sense says specifically that Fern is going to choose the safest route, going to choose the easiest route. Like, Fern's going to use logic to avoid a lot of things. Now, yes, she realized very quickly that's a wrong... It could be right, but it's the wrong concept here. It seems like Fern is obviously very knowledgeable about dungeons. She's been to a lot of them. So she's going to be able to take them the safest route. And the joke is, yes, she's going to run into a lot of mimics that she's going to get caught by. But additionally, because she knows so much about dungeons, and because of what Himmel has kind of instilled upon her, she's going to check every single floor. She's going to look everywhere. Like, it shows her going this way and goes, oh, that's the main route. Let's go this way. And then Fern's like, why? Oh, another mimic. She wants to get more grimoires, get more magical, useless junk. But yes, it kind of implied the idea that Sense was wanting to follow Fern because she was going to choose the safest route. But I think it's really, obviously, they know who Fern is. And I think Sense wants to see more of Fern in action. I think she's curious about how Fern works. And it could be also a thing of, because she's a pacifist, because Sense is a pacifist, she doesn't like conflict. In examining what Fern did in that first exam, she knows that Fern has kind of gone out of her way to avoid conflict. She was doing everything in her own way that was outside of what other people was doing. Yes, Fern did end up in conflict, obviously, but none of it was her wanting that conflict. She was just trying to get the mission done. But yeah, Fern gets stuck. I totally thought of Mendo when she got stuck in the mimic, which, yes, they imply this idea of her being stuck in it and flailing around, but they never had her voicing in there where she's like screaming, it's dark, I'm scared, it's dark. And I immediately thought of Mendo. I made a cut of this to put on Twitter, and I need to make a cut of her screaming that and then cut over to Mendo screaming about being in a dark place. It would be a great, they literally sound the same, just different voice and whatnot, but yeah, and then Fern trying to drag her out of there. And immediately Sense is like, I think I chose the wrong group. But yes, we find out from the talking Fern butt that, yes, you got to push it back in there. It chokes it, and then it spits out, and then she blasts it. And then find out that, yes, at some point, Fern had ringlets. And it was because she blasted her way out of a mimic. Good stuff. It was super cute. I loved all the moments with Fern. But it all leads up to a really heartwarming kind of message in here. And the idea that, yes, the idea of going into dungeons is instilled upon Fern by Himmel, which we've seen that. And oddly enough, it seemed like we've touched on this before, but it was from a different kind of angle. And the idea that Himmel it was essentially going into these dungeons to, give Fern something, give Fern some great memories, and additionally themselves. Himmel himself, his idea is, yes, when I'm helping people, when I'm going to do something, take down these monsters and whatnot, I don't want to go immediately to the lower floor and take out the boss. Or the monster. His idea is, well, if we're going to be doing this to help people, I want to have fun until that journey ends. So this whole path, in the grander scheme here, he's making a parallel here. The dungeon here is my life. I want to enjoy things as much as possible before I get to the end. Make happy memories. It's the same as life. I want to do all these great things, have fun to the end of this life. And again, that kind of plays into the previous discussion about Himmel and what he was doing for Fern. And the idea that it was with Stark, when they first was bringing Stark in the group. There was this thing they were implying is the idea that Himmel was going out of his way to have them go in dungeons and stuff and find grimoires because he was trying to make memories for Fern. He knew that she wanted these grimoires, knew that she wanted this stuff. And it also kind of explains why the joys of finding all this junk is instilled upon Fern. It was instilled upon her by Himmel. Himmel essentially created this idea of going in there and grabbing things, and she finds joy in it now. So it kind of, yes, we've always had this idea that Fern has always loved finding grimoires, finding spells. But it's also kind of something that, again, Himmel instilled upon her. So you can assume that every joy of finding things and this junk that she has is because it reminds her of Himmel. And those memories and those joys immediately makes her happy. It's super cute. And then, yes, in this little segment, we're finding out that has been instilled upon Fern. So Himmel has once again passed something on to Frieren, who's passed it on to Fern. And the idea that Sense is asking Fern, like, what are you doing? Like, you seem like you're so powerful. For your age, you seem so powerful. I've never met somebody as powerful as you. But that's not the surprising thing about Sense. What's surprising to her is that, why are you so powerful at such a young age, but yet it seems like you shouldn't be that powerful because you show no signs of enthusiasm or dedication to actually being powerful. Which, yes, to Fern is like, well, yeah, when I was younger, Hater saved me. I wanted to repay that by becoming stronger. That's what he wanted her to do, and she wanted to do that before he passed. That's why she worked so hard. And yeah, it seems like she's lost a lot of that desire once he passed away. I no longer have that goal. But now she continues because she's with Frieren, and she enjoys being with Frieren. Because when she goes to dungeons and whatnot, Frieren's happy and joyous. And that joy is passing on to her. She is happy because Frieren's happy. Frieren was happy because Himmel was happy. It keeps passing it on, passing that buck. Is that joy in somebody else? When somebody else has joy, it makes you joyful. It's a certain connection that you can have with people that all it takes, your joy in life, is simply to see joy in them. So it's really, really cute. So, and Sense replying to all this says, I was right to follow you, because even in this brutal dungeon, you guys will enjoy it. So in the end, she had her fears because Fern keeps getting stuck in mimics, but she finally realized this is good. I can have it, which again plays into what we're kind of implying with Sense. A pacifist, doesn't like seeing people dying, doesn't like to see that wasted potential of other people. That's why she went out of her way to get these golems. If you're looking bad, get out of there. You don't have to finish this dungeon. I don't want to see people potential being lost like that. And in here, she's seeing joy in watching Frieren and Fern. So it's like, oh, this is going to be an enjoyable trip. It's such a massive contrast to the first exam, really. But yes, it kind of concluded oddly because we never had Frieren and Fern and Sense run into a mimic. Now, there's two ways that I can see this kind of playing out. One is because Frieren is doing a good job of avoiding it. Like, Frieren can sense it. Frieren knows that in this dungeon, there is this mimic creating thing. And so she could possibly be avoiding that because she did well in telling Sense even a trap. Sense was going to step on a trap. It kind of implies Sense is not some kind of all-knowing being going into this dungeon. Even she would probably step on a trap. So Frieren is even giving her advice there. I think Frieren is probably avoiding it. Or the other question mark is going to be, if Frieren is not avoiding it and Frieren and team is going to run into somebody, who are they going to run into? That's the question mark. Two possibilities here. One is going to be that Frieren and party is going to run into Denken and all them. They possibly will run. And then their party is going to run into Denken's party, and then they will all have to fight Frieren together. Frieren's going to have to tell them, okay, knowing me, this is my weakness, do this, or whatever. Or possibly, thinking about the rest of this dungeon, it hasn't implied that they can't be created twice. So even if Wirbel and them take out their team, another one could be created. Even if they took out Laufen's clone, another Laufen could be created. Or Frieren and team can possibly run into everybody, or possibly Sense. That's my theory. And the only thing they've implied so far that Sense can do is create tentacles out of her hair, which was interesting. But we haven't seen what else Sense can do. If that's her specialty, or if she has something else. Maybe she just turns into a massive thing of hair that just hits everything, like this massive tentacle monster slime thing. So my theory is going to be that Frieren's either going to not run into anything at all. Frieren's going to run into the other party and have to fight Frieren. Frieren can run into a mimicking of all of them. Like, the dungeon itself senses how powerful Frieren is and sends literally mimics of everybody at them. Or possibly Frieren is going to fight Sense. And that would be interesting because Sense is not going to get involved. Again, Sense has said, I'm not going to get involved. Now, because Sense is not a member of the test itself, if a mimic is made of her, she might get involved because that is outside of the scope. She's essentially creating an extra threat that was not intended, so she might actually help them. But I'm curious if it might end up being Sense, and then we'll get to see how Frieren fights against a first-class mage. That would be the easiest way they could introduce forcing somebody, at least Frieren, to fight one of the first-class mages, is by just literally having her fight a clone. So that'd be super interesting. I'm kind of leaning on Sense. I'm kind of leaning on Sense. Or watch Seri is nearby and it mimics Seri and the other fights Seri. Like Seri's been watching the whole time and then goes, oh crap, it mimicked me. Sorry, Frieren. That would be interesting. Some of the notes I have here is I did find it interesting that they did note, or at least Fern noted, that they used a spell that essentially can detect if a mimic is a mimic, or a chest is a mimic. And it said that it's 99% accurate. Well, no mage ever accomplished anything unless they acknowledged that 1%, or like the most historical discoveries was going after that 1%. And then no, it's a mimic. You all knew it was going to be a mimic because Denken totally flagged it. What idiot would get stuck in what idiot would be doing this when they get stuck in mimics? In regards to replicas, it was interesting that they kind of went out of the way to explain it as something as a magic, obviously, that is the work of monsters or demons. Now, it makes sense on the idea of demons, because we've already mentioned this idea that demons themselves, they craft a spell and they perfect it over many, many years. Now, monsters, that's the interesting thing. I don't think that we've ever gotten into the realm of monsters using magic. Magical monsters, basically. Unless it's just kind of tying the two of them together. I meant to check the manga and see how it kind of translates it there. Yeah, even the manga, it says monsters or demons. The work of monsters or demons. So again, I don't think we've really gotten in details about monsters. Yes, we have explained that monsters do have magical power. They have mana and whatnot. But again, the idea of them doing something like that, I guess technically it goes in the realm of like the mimic that was in the forest when Fern and Fern were going there. So I guess that's technically applied there, because that wasn't a demon, that was a monster, and it was replicating Heiter, and it was looking into their memories, and it was creating a Himmel and a Heiter. So again, I guess it technically is applied there. That is technically consistent to the story so far. But again, what they're specifically saying here is that this is almost perfect. Like, it seemed like it was acting and everything just like Laufen. It was strong like her, using abilities like her. This is like the most perfect replica that they've actually seen. But thankfully, like Richter points out, good thing it's easily noticeable, because then we'd be fighting each other. Way to flag that one, Richter. We're gonna have like a replica later on that's not gonna look like it's obviously a replica, which kind of implies this idea that maybe it's going for because it's focused so much on replicating the mind, that it doesn't replicate the body itself. Because like with Lon technically does create some really great clones, but it might not be as powerful. But again, nobody noticed it except for Ubel. But I guess the impressive thing here is obviously that it's creating multiples. But anyways, that's my thoughts on episode 23 of Fern Beyond Journey's End. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below, comment, let me know what's thought of the episode. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button to get my content, and news, reviews, first impressions, top list if it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, membership button down below. Greatly appreciate what it does, and y'all take care.